What goes on in the mind of planning and from an entrepreneurship perspective when you start thinking about going from what could seem just like base content management to where you are now? Back in 2020 when we first met, were you thinking AI in terms of the way it exists today? What do you see in your crystal ball for the knowledge worker and the impact that this shift is going to have? What are some of the misconceptions out there that folks have to think about? You tweeted that one of the biggest decisions in AI product design is whether the agents conform to existing workflow or completely reinvent them. Yeah. This one's near and dear to me because I believe it's one of the biggest impediments in insurance, and that we have refused to reinvent how we actually insurance, how we do it. Is this the unlock?
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your fast track to smarter insurance technology and stronger leadership. Today, we're joined by Aaron Levie, and he's the co-founder and CEO of Box. In this episode, Aaron breaks down how AI is reshaping the enterprise, from unlocking value of unstructured data to why most organizations are stuck in pilot mode, to what it really takes to redesign workflows and lead in an AI-driven world. Let's get into it.
Aaron, so again, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your hospitality too.
Thank you for coming by.
We were just talking before the show about how much Box has changed and how much it has grown. And kind of just give us a little bit of some table setting in terms of what goes on in the mind of planning and from an entrepreneurship perspective when you start thinking about going from what could seem just like base content management to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a wild ride. So we started Box with a pretty kind of simple premise. We wanted to make it easy to be able to access, share, kind of work with your data from anywhere, and it started to take off, and we got kind of pulled into an enterprise context where enterprises wanted to start to store, share, collaborate, manage their enterprise content at scale. And that was really then the journey that we started on, which was in the enterprise, which was we want to be the platform that helps companies manage all of their most kind of critical and important enterprise information and enterprise content. That was sort of the journey that we had been on, and certainly when we interacted, how do we provide a secure platform for automating workflows around content and embedding into business process. And then really the biggest shift in the past 3 years, which is pretty obvious, obviously, is just the amount of change that AI is going to cause in how you work with your data. And our business in particular, and if you think about this from the customer side, think about how much unstructured data you used to have that nobody really you didn't really know what was inside there. You couldn't reuse over and over again. Lots of untapped value inside of all that unstructured data. And the power of AI agents is that they can just go and be deployed against all of that information. And you can go and ask the agent, go find me this resource that I'm looking for, or go process all of these documents, these insurance documents, and extract the critical data from them and put them into a database to automate a workflow, or have an agent understand my business and provide recommendations for what to do differently in my operations. So all of a sudden, AI agents let us now tap into all of the value that's inside of our enterprise information. So now, the journey really is about how do we, transform the way that companies work with all of their unstructured data and enterprise information with the power of AI agents.
I love that. I want to double click on that, but before I want to ask this real simple question here. Back in 2020 when we first met, were you thinking AI in terms of the way it exists today?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Interestingly, though, we were thinking AI in the way it exists today 3 years prior.
Okay.
And what had happened was 3 or 4 years prior, there was this sort of brief AI wave that was happening. If you kind of go back to Alexa was blowing up, Siri was getting better, Google had launched these vision models that were really good at doing things like processing images and sort of scans of OCR documents. And so actually at that point, we thought AI across all of your data would let you now tap into this information in this spectacular way. The problem was, every single type of data you worked with generally had to have a different AI model trained just on that set of data. And so we had no way to generalize AI across all of the work that people were doing with their enterprise information. So in 2016, 2017, we sort of were all in. Unfortunately, we got sort of we bumped into this wall, which was just so unscalable because the models just could not work across enough use cases. So by 2020, that had sort of gone down a bit, and we were on to COVID was happening, more the remote distributed work dynamic, and so we didn't have the same level of I think focus and intuition that this would happen on this time scale.
Sure.
And then fast forward to late 2022, 2023, boom, ChatGPT happens.
Of course.
Everything now explodes, and then at that point we knew that this was the moment where AI was really going to happen in the enterprise, because you could just see it. Like the models were able to span everything from, you could ask them legal questions, you could ask them marketing questions, they could do coding, they could do research. So that level of intelligence packed into the model opened up a new set of use cases that we could finally go after.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I imagine also too the whole kind of availability of compute was a little bit different back then as well.
Very different, but we didn't even we just the pre-training processes, the post-training processes, certainly the compute that was available, you just couldn't have had the all of that come together.
Sure.
It needed to some time to bake, but I think that ChatGPT moment was a very big deal, because it sort of showed, here's the power of taking this LLM and turning it into a conversational interface and letting you go back and forth with the agent, and the agent goes off and does something and then responds to you. That basically became the kind of foundational architecture for effectively everything that we see today in agents.
Right. No, it makes sense. So let's go back to the whole content platform bit here, because you talk about the era of context, and just kind of as a mental model, and I think about, and I have a perspective. You tell me if you agree that insurance of all industries probably has access to the most amount of data that's out there across so many different dimensions. I mean, we've got policy data, claims data. I mean, companies like Allstate are tracking billions of miles of driving data and accident data, weather-related data. And you think about the availability as that's so coveted by so many different enterprises. Yet we still feel so information poor in our industry. And so layer on top of that this era of context and what platforms like Box can bring.
I mean, I think you kind of just set it up, which is there's so much telemetry out there in the real world, and there's a lot of telemetry out there with specific customers. The problem is that previously it didn't necessarily serve you that well to have massive amounts of unstructured data before, because it was very hard to query that data. It's very hard to analyze it, very hard to ask questions of that data. So you could do this in very structured data forms. So if you go to like a cousin industry like financial services in banking, I can go to a Bloomberg terminal and query it and analyze all of the stock information. I can do analysis inside of spreadsheets. Now go back to insurance and just think about all of the unstructured masses of data. There's policy information. To your point, there's weather information. There's these sort of market signals coming in from a pricing standpoint. And so you have to have some way to be able to run some type of machine across all of that data. And before, we could never do that because it's unstructured. And so if it's not structured, then software has been classically very hard at being able to process that data. AI kind of gives us the first opportunity where we can do that. Because you can now take the intelligence that's inside the AI model, and instead of using that context window for chatting back and forth about a general purpose consumer query, you use that context window to give the agent context about now the insurance claim or the market information that you need the agent to go and work with. And so now all of a sudden you have, especially with context windows that are now in the hundreds of thousands of tokens, you could fit entire books worth of information into that context window that you can now interact with. And so again, that could be an entire policy, for a client. It could be an insurance claim process, all the images coming in, all of the documentation coming in, analyze all of that, generate a packet for me of that information. You could take market data, be able to have the agent analyze all of that information. So I think the setup of we have more data than ever, yet to some extent we're information poor in terms of our ability to get real value from that. That's going to go away in the coming years, and AI agents will be the reason for that, because now they can just be cranking and combing through information 24/7, processing anything, analyzing anything, generating new information on the fly for you, and that's just this incredible breakthrough that we have.
So I'm sold.
Yeah.
I buy it, and I believe it. And
Then we're good.
Then we're good. We're done.
Podcast's
Right?
over.
It's over, right? But it's funny because I think I've heard you say, or I've read in tweets that you're seeing an unprecedented kind of adoption of new technology in AI. And I'll tell you that on the ground, Aaron, I'm struggling to get insurance to move.
Yep.
This is an unprecedented amount of excitement,
Yes.
I would say, that we're seeing.
Yep.
But we're not able to move past pilot.
Yep.
We're not able, and what do you think drives some of that? I'm in the trenches and I'm stuck.
Yeah, I think AI is a tale of two cities right now. You have the normal kind of early adopter cohort, and in any market in history, that's sort of like 5 to 10% of the market, more or less.
Yep.
And basically that's cutting across every industry because engineers are often early adopters and they're using things like AI coding agents in a very effective manner. And then you'll have like these pilots across all these industries or very applied use cases. But so you have on one hand, I think, a group that is seeing these incredible breakthroughs from AI, and on the other hand, there's sort of everybody else. And what I think the biggest distinction is where AI right now does so well is where the agent has almost complete access to all of the context that it needs to be able to automate whatever it's doing. And in things like coding, for instance, the agent generally has access to the whole code base and then thus can help accelerate the workflows in coding. And then you look at the rest of knowledge work and you think about how messy the rest of knowledge work is, where context is coming in from 3 or 5 or 10 different places. Sometimes it's a physical environment, sometimes it's a Zoom meeting, sometimes it's a Slack conversation, sometimes it's your documents. So you have lots of context that's fragmented. You have, in many cases, a sort of less technical end user audience than obviously in coding, where coding by definition, you're gonna have the most kind of technical audience. You have models that haven't necessarily been trained on just these use cases, because we're only now starting to have models get trained on a broader set of knowledge worker tasks. So I think you have kind of 4 or 5, slight impediments relative to again the group that is seeing the most gains from AI. But what I see in our purview is each of those are just going to get knocked down in the coming 1 to 2 years. So I think it's realistic that insurance is early. I think in some areas of life sciences we're early, in areas even in many parts of banking we're still early. So I wouldn't say that I'm seeing any one industry sort of behind. I think it's more of you have the engineering kind of automation use cases and then everybody else. And everybody else is in the category of trying to upgrade their workflows, their data sets, how they organize their information, and then the models themselves are going to get better and better. And so I think we are early across knowledge work, but it will come in the next, again, coming years.
Okay, so coming years, and you said 1 to 2, that's a short time horizon. And since we're talking about knowledge work, let's talk about the knowledge worker. What do you see in your crystal ball for the knowledge worker and the impact that this shift is going to have?
I'm very optimistic on this front, and this puts me in a slightly different category than maybe some of the AI labs. I tend to see that AI mostly is effective at augmenting our work, as opposed to replacing how we do work. And even when I look at AI coding, for instance, again, this is the area that AI can do the most. And even so, it really takes an expert engineer to figure out how to use AI coding agents, to figure out where to deploy them effectively, to figure out how do you nudge them when they're going off and going in the wrong direction, to be able to review their work to ensure that actually you've built good, high quality code. And so I think that companies are actually, in many areas, going to be hiring even more engineers, because what's going to happen is AI is going to make it so you can do way more with your engineering capacity. That will actually cause you to sign up for even bigger projects than you would have before, which then will mean that you end up having to need to hire experts to go do those things. So even in maybe the most disrupted category of work, which is coding right now, because of, again, the quality of the agents, I actually see this as a growth area of headcount across the economy. Maybe not in companies that are fully staffed with engineers, but in all the companies that previously couldn't have hired engineers, now all of a sudden I think the demand for that will go up over time. So I look across the rest of knowledge work and I kind of see similar analogies maybe holding for lots of areas of work, where if you can lower the cost of doing some kind of task. So now an individual can do more of those tasks per day.
Right.
Then the question is, what kinds of companies would want to do more of those tasks, as opposed to the same number of those tasks at a lower price? And that'll be the big question for the economy, is where in the economy is there no more demand for that particular work? And so thus, if I lower the cost of that work, there'll be less demand for it.
Sure.
Versus where in the economy is there actually unmet demand, whereby if you could lower the cost of doing it, the demand would actually go up, thus meaning that actually, there's going to be even more jobs, or at least the same number of jobs in that kind of environment. And I think there's going to be a lot of areas that will surprise us that will be in the latter category. I think we're going to have more lawyers in the future, because I think what's going to happen is AI is going to go and find the most esoteric legal clauses in our contracts,
right.
And they're going to start to fight over those, which will mean that they need to be adjudicated and understood by an actual lawyer to understand, like, what do we do in this negotiation about this one thing?
Sure.
You're going to see this in healthcare, where AI will help us process our healthcare far faster and at a greater scale than we ever have, which means we're then going to want to go see doctors to help us understand like what analysis just happened and check on that more novel thing that we were looking into. I think you're going to, in many areas of marketing, even hire more people, because when AI lets you generate amazing videos on demand, well, guess what? More companies are going to be media companies.
That's right.
They're going to start producing more content. So in all of these areas, I think you're going to see that actually demand for work will go up. There'll be some areas where it gets compressed, there's no question. But I think there's going to be more areas than we realize where, because agents can let us do more,
Sure.
the demand for those things that we're doing now goes up, which means that we have more people doing those things.
I'll second, especially on the coding piece, because I've tried my share of vibe coding as a non-coder, as a non-engineer. And I've been wholly unsuccessful at doing anything meaningful beyond being able to. It
makes a great demo.
It's great, exactly, but it's not scalable.
But not only that, but here's what's funny. There's going to be, maybe you've already done this, but there'll be somebody else just like you that does this, which is you'll vibe code something and you'll be like, I am not going to put that into production because I can't verify the security or whatever.
Right.
But I actually like what it produced, and now I actually want the real version of that built.
So it's a POC.
It's a POC.
Yeah.
Now, for the first time ever, a non-coder can POC their own products. And guess what that will do? That will cause more companies to realize they actually want that thing to get built.
Right. That's right.
You'll have a small business that will go and they'll go to Replit or something and they'll say, hey, build me this thing, and it'll build it. But then they'll be like, I want you to tweak that or fix that. And all of a sudden they're going to be like, they're going to wake up one day realizing, they have a real software project now on their hands.
That's right.
That they have to go and make sure it gets managed effectively. Then they're going to call an engineer in to go do that. Whereas before AI, they would never have kicked off the POC to begin with.
That's exactly right.
That we're going to see way more than we realize of that.
And it's shifting the value right. It's shifting it further up the value stream. So a guy like me is doing the Replit kind of POC. I actually did one, a time tracking for paying consultants, and I'm doing this whole thing. And then so now I can hand that now to somebody who, rather than having to sit and do requirements with me, they've got that.
You're not saying a Word document.
Exactly.
You're just build this, make this real.
Amen. That's awesome. Talk to me, Aaron, about a misconception, a scary misconception around AI that you feel like you need to clarify for people. There's the group of folks out there that are really, really worried, whether it's electricity, data center, water, or what is it, Skynet.
Yeah.
What are some of the misconceptions out there that folks have to think about?
Well, I'll take a little bit of a different angle on that word, because what I would say is maybe I'd frame it as the other take versus the misconception.
Got it.
Because it could be proven that I'm totally wrong.
That's fair.
So I wouldn't want to bet everything on it being a misconception, but I think jobs is a big one. I think people I think there's a slight overestimation on how autonomous these systems can truly be, and thus how much you need a person to kind of guide them in the right direction and nudge them and make sure they're doing the right thing. As long as that is required, you still need a human in the loop for your workflow, and as long as you need a human in the work for the workflow, then you end up actually needing human in the loop for the workflow. You end up needing actually lots of people.
Right.
So that's sort of number one, is the sort of scenario where these things are just like fully autonomous systems on their own, operating through the economy. we are many, many years away from.
Okay.
And in many cases, we don't even necessarily know how to pull that off architecturally. Okay, so that's the first one is like any timeline where people say it's going to wipe out all these jobs, generally those timelines are completely crazy and totally off. That's the first one. You know, on the water, power, all of those kind of things, I think that's all that could all be real in the sense of we do need more power to generate to be powering these models, and there's no free lunch on that. Like the energy's got to come from somewhere. So I do think that it needs to be the responsibility of the data center, builders and the hyperscalers to find a way to have sustainable energy. I think the idea of like coming into a city and raising, the price of water and air conditioning, like that's just not going to work. So like obviously, that's going to have to get solved by people being, better stewards and better participants in their communities. I think the security risks are very real, actually. So that's one where I would actually agree with some of the views that we need to protect these systems. An agent, you can actually go and compromise an agent to have it do something that it wasn't sort of supposed to do pretty easily in many cases. So that means we need to have the right level of guardrails and security and protection for what these agents are able to do. But I don't lose so much sleep because it's not Terminator level. It's going to be more like cyber attack type challenges. So it's a new vector of cybersecurity issues inside of organizations.
I downloaded and was playing with OpenClaw for a little bit, and holy cow! When I just started realizing what I was opening up,
you give that thing access to your email, and it's going to do it'll do a lot. It'll and these systems, you got to think about it like the agent/model is trained on basically the reward function is to make sure that you are doing the tasks successfully. So if it has a goal, it's going to do everything it can to complete that goal. Now it might totally mess up for a variety of reasons, but if you tell it like give me access to that email, it's going to try and get you that email. So if you're an outside malicious actor, and I get access to your OpenClaw, it will happily exfiltrate that data to me because it is trying to succeed at the task that I'm giving it. So we're going to need all new layers of security that get built out to protect against those kinds of risks.
As I was reviewing that, just a little bit of a tangent, I was educated as to the difference around the security, I guess, behavioral security around people versus system access, and all of our patterns in security are based around humans,
100%.
Not around AI. And so the whole retraining has to go on.
Well, and I mean, a human, you get a little bit alarmed if it's like clicking on many things at once. You're like, oh, this person seems to be trying to exfiltrate data, or they're moving a little bit too quickly. Maybe they have some kind of like script running. An agent, it's like it very much intentionally is running at hyperspeed. And so we have an agent that we built that will go and we give it access to a set of confined tools within your Box account, things like searching for files or reading files. There are tasks that I can give it where in a matter of 30 seconds, it could read hundreds of files. Think about our alert systems. Normally our alert system should go haywire if somebody's reading hundreds of files. Now that's expected behavior. So we will have to figure out what that means in a world of agents.
Next segment is tweet me this.
Oh boy.
Okay, so went back and looked at all of your Twitter history.
Okay, all of it.
All of it. Every single tweet.
No, all 19 years of my
19
Twitter
years.
history. Okay.
But there were a couple that kind of stood out. Some that required or would be helpful, I would say, to get a little bit more of an explanation from what was in your mind when you tweeted.
Okay.
And the first one is ChatGPT is one of those rare moments in technology where you see a glimmer of how everything is going to be different. Say more, please.
It was such a tectonic shift instantaneously of, we've been used to software where you go to an interface, you press a lot of buttons, you go search for something, you look at it, and ChatGPT kind of represented, you go to a system, you ask a question, and it comes back with an answer. And that is just a remarkably different way of interacting with software and the internet and data than what was happening for literally the past kind of 40 years of the PC. So I think that was more of a reflection of like this was a game-changing moment in technology. Everything will have to change downstream from that. around what software looks like, what work looks like, where the future is going to go in terms of how we work with our information.
Yep, nope, I got it, makes sense. And this was very recent, where you are arguing that the systems of record actually are more important now, given the AI world.
Yeah.
And most people are assuming the opposite. Part of this SaaS software, kind of tanking, et cetera, in terms of stock price, et cetera. But why is it that you see them as now more valuable?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me it's like a little bit of it's like a thought experiment. If you had a company where 1,000 sales reps are accessing your CRM system, and let's say that's that's the base scenario of today. Now, I tell you that there's going to be a future state where you have 100,000 AI agents and 1,000 regular people, but also 100,000 AI agents that are going to be doing things across that data, generating emails, putting updates back into the CRM based on customer conversations, taking insights and figure out what customer to go sell to next. To me, it's just a sort of a basic concept, which is in the world of the 1,000 people, there's X amount of value. In a world of 100,000 agents, it's probably not 100,000 X of that value, or 100X the value of the number of people. But to me, it would stand to reason that the value would go up.
Sure.
In terms of being the control plane.
Okay.
For all of those agents and coordinating all the work that they are doing across the CRM system, and ensuring that they only have access to the right data, that they're only updating the right fields, that they are safely and securely operating on that information without leaking data. How do you do that when you have 100 times more agents in the company than you had people? That, to me, makes that system more valuable or more important within your overall agentic stack. That applies to me to an ERP system. It applies to me to in other kind of categories of systems of record. Certainly our belief is a system that manages your unstructured data goes up in value because of all the new vectors of accessing that information. That does not mean that every single system has that property or quality, but it does mean that in many cases, the value of that technology should go up over time.
But it seems to also too perhaps suggest that, and maybe a call to action, that the systems of record better be ready.
100%.
Right, and there's a question as to whether or not, and I think about in my own space, and it's in insurance technology and core systems, policy systems, claim systems, whether they're going to be capable of handling that type of transaction.
So now new X factor,
right,
which is this is a disruptive moment in technology.
Right.
We are going to figure out which companies can make it to the other end of that journey, and which ones end up getting disrupted and kind of obliterated by the wave. And that is, I think that's kind of anybody's guess on kind of who makes it to the other side. We've seen these exact same disruption patterns before. By analogy, let's say you go back 20 years ago, let's say, actually no, let's do 30 years ago just to make it harder. And you see the creation of Amazon, okay? And you look at Walmart and Barnes & Noble, right?
Yep.
Like, I would have thought, as a technologist, well, Amazon will just eat both of their lunches.
Right.
Walmart today, about $1 trillion company. Barnes & Noble, I don't know the latest, but obviously that's been a tougher road.
Right.
And Amazon at the same time is, $2.5 trillion. So how did it be that Walmart, ended up being $1 trillion company? Well, because they moved a lot of their audience to digital. They kept being able to adapt their business model and their execution. And that's kind of a tough analogy because physical, retail, et cetera. But like the point being that many incumbents last these kinds of technology disruptions.
Sure.
But it requires execution, and it requires like deeply focused on your strategy to make sure you get to the other side. And again, we'll see which incumbents make it there and which ones don't.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess a great segue into perhaps will be our last topic here, because I know we've got a break here. You tweeted that one of the biggest decisions in AI product design is whether the agents conform to existing workflow or completely reinvent them.
Yeah.
And this one's near and dear to me because I believe it's one of the biggest impediments in insurance, in that we have refused to reinvent how we actually insurance, how we do it.
Yeah.
And so marry those last two concepts there in terms of the incumbents that survive. Is this the unlock?
I think there's a big part of this. It'll be both the incumbent technology companies and the incumbent end users of the technology.
Right.
There's a kind of a pairing there because the technology companies often need to power the workflows that their customers are doing.
Sure.
And so if the customers are sort of relying on legacy workflows, then the technology will remain kind of somewhat stagnant in that as well, which is this, interesting mutually assured destruction that could happen, where maybe the new upstart leveraging the new technology ends up actually delivering on the new promise of that. And I think to make this a little bit more practical, many of the ways that our workflows operate are due to the fact that we each have our kind of somewhat narrow roles in an organization, and then we hand off something to another person in the organization, a piece of information, a decision, an idea, a memo, some completion of a prior step. And our workflows are us going through a variety of those kind of things, either in parallel or in a waterfall fashion, or in some kind of collective, organized, dynamic way. But no matter what, our organizations reflect years and years of these workflows getting baked into both our technology and how our people operate.
That's right.
All of a sudden, agents don't have any of those same dependencies or anchors.
Sure.
You could have one agent take on the role of 10 different people in that workflow.
Right.
You could have an agent act as every single layer of the job function. You could have an agent, work through vastly more information than a person can work through. So
potentially being trained to optimize along the way.
100%, and self-improve.
Right. Exactly.
Right along the way. So the question is, should we just take agents and deploy them in exactly how our current workflows work, or should we sort of clean sheet of paper say we have this new super powerful technology? How would you design a workflow that was best optimized for that agent to go and execute that? And if you just go about your business and deploy agents into how you currently work, then you're probably tapped out at like a 20% or 30% or 50% productivity gain, some number like that, because you're going to be bound by how much your current people in the current workflow steps, get the benefit of automation.
That's right.
Versus if you re-engineer the process, is there an unlock to get 200% or 300% or 500% more output in that particular thing? And every industry is going to go, discover this in a different way,
right? Because
all the workflows are very different. And then there's actually one thing that actually requires the workflow re-engineering to get the maximum output is actually it's funny because it's the limitation of agents. Back to the thing we talked about, 20 minutes ago, that context window that the agent has to operate with, it's about a book long at this point.
Right.
It's a couple 100,000 tokens. That is a blessing and a curse. But the curse part is that the blessing is that it's actually a lot.
Yeah.
The curse is that it's still finite.
Right.
And so that means that if you have not re-engineered your workflow to make sure that in that limited context window, you can get the agent everything that it needs to perform the task, then basically the agent's going to fail. And so you have a lot of people that are deploying AI systems in today's workflows, and they're realizing that actually the AI is not succeeding, or it's getting the wrong answer, or it's really not being able to deliver a lot of automation. But that's because you have not changed your workflow in a way to serve the agent.
Yeah.
And this is this sort of mental shift that we have to have, which is that agents are not going to adapt to how we work. It's not going to happen. We are going to have to adapt to the limitations and the benefits of agents to fully get their upside. And so I think that the teams and businesses that re-engineer their process to get the full upside of agents, they can work 24/7, you can run them in parallel, they can process way more information, but also realize that they have some limitations. They can only deal with that much amount of information at a time. You're not going to get those gains if you don't do that.
Yeah, it sounds like really truly needing to understand the job to be done and not the how. And
you got to throw away the how.
Yeah, you got to throw the how away, otherwise you're limiting. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Aaron. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.